Now let's talk about another service, which is S3 service, which is simple storage service. So S3 is the storage service offered by AWS.
Yes.
So if you want to, let's say if you want to save your files, or if you want to save your backups, your media files, then you can opt for S3 bucket option. So yeah, it is also, as you can see, it's a scalable, secure and highly durable storage service to store any amount of data. So whenever, let's suppose that you want to save your data, let's suppose in a Mumbai region. So whenever you save your data in the Mumbai region, your data will be replicated across all the availability zones that are in AWS, that are in this Mumbai region. So let's suppose a disaster happens on one of your availability zone. It means one of your data centers. Then your data is already replicated in other availability zone, right?
Yes.
So you can just access from there, right? As a user, you will not know that you have to go to which availability zone. I mean, AWS will do all this for you. Okay. And there are two types of entities in S3. The first one is the S3 bucket, and another one is the object. So S3 bucket is like a container of objects.
Okay.
It's like a folder, and in that folder you can store your objects. So object represents the data as well as its metadata.
Yeah.
So whenever you save your file on an S3 bucket, the file will have the metadata as well. So when it was uploaded, things like that.
Yes.
So that's what object represents.
Okay.
The object itself as well as all the metadata that this data has. Okay. So these are the two identities or two entities of S3. Now let's talk about how these S3 buckets are secured.
Okay.
Right. So there are some access control policies in S3 buckets that you can use to secure a bucket. So whenever you create a bucket, it is private by default. It means no one can access it. Okay. No one can publicly access it.
Okay.
Or no one from any other AWS account can access it. So you have to apply some access control policies on these S3 buckets so that it can be accessed by the principals or the users that you want to give access to, right?
Okay.
So there are three types of policies in S3 bucket with which you can provide access to this bucket.
Okay.
The first up is the bucket policies. So these are also called resource policies. So resource policy, this bucket policy is also called resource policy, right? So this you can directly attach to the bucket itself. Okay, the JSON format I showed you, right?
Yes.
So resource policy is similar to that.
Okay.
It is also in JSON format.
All right.
So on that bucket, you can define which principal can perform which actions on this S3 bucket.
Okay.
Right?
By the way, I have one question. Can this be misconfigured to be? Can this be misconfigured to be publicly accessible by any chance? Okay.
Yeah, but by default it will not happen.
Yeah, exactly. That I think that's what Sashi also told us previously in the presentation as well. What you said was these are not vulnerabilities as such; these are misconfigurations.
Yeah.
All right.
So so by default it is private and secure. No one can access it. But let's suppose there is a bucket.
Yes.
And that bucket has many folders in it, and in those folders you have your data.
Yeah.
Right. But let's suppose you want to publicly available one set of folder.
Yeah.
Only one folder. But you have applied a policies which give access to all the objects or all the folders or anything in that bucket.
Good.
It means the folder that is you want to publicly access, that will be available, as well as the other folders in that bucket that you want to be secure or confidential will be also available to the attackers, right? So that's why these bucket policies are required. Apart from these bucket policies, we have IAM policies as well. So IAM policies are directly attached to the identities, which are your users, groups or roles that we discussed. So you can also directly assign these IAM policies to the identity itself, and based on that, I think I showed an example, right, where we want access to example bucket. The one IAM policy I showed you.
Yes.
That IAM policy you can attach to the identity itself. Okay. Then finally we have access control lists. So they are used to provide granular permissions to the buckets or to the objects. But so when AWS started with the S3 service, this was the only access control, which is access control list offered by AWS. But this is now a legacy access control method.
Yes.
But yeah, these are still in use. Okay. But the major ones, how we are setting up nowadays using bucket policy as well as the IAM policies. Okay. And this is where misconfigurations can happen. Okay.